I want to talk a bit, you mentioned Arya and how we don't really know where her story is going and how that much hasn't really happened for her. When you think about it, because she lost her sight at the end of season 5, and then the first few episodes of this season where she doesn't have her sight, and now she got it back, but she's still in the same place. And we're talking about her and Dany especially, has two, very popular and very cool characters on the show, but who right now are so removed from sort of the ongoing, what we consider sort of the central storylines of the show.
They're really removed, and I think with Dany, it feels like we've seen some of this storyline already. She's in an interesting place in Vice Dothraki, and I saw someone tweet last night, like, hopefully this means that Dany is going to lead, like, the other widows at Vice Dothraki and, like, take over the world or something
After
amazing
the reality
like that.
show
Right,
about them.
actually, absolutely. But yeah, it's hard, and I think in any previous season where the stakes weren't this high, maybe these storylines wouldn't be as frustrating. But when you have like all the big things happening with Jon and with Bran and these other much more exciting storylines, to see characters sort of like stagnate and not really in any way that's developing them any further is a little bit frustrating. I know that those are the moments where I like catch up on Twitter as I'm like live tweeting these episodes and things like that. And I have faith that they're going to have some big payoff at some point this season, but I think, and also like the character no one is going to ever talk about this season, Sam, like, you have these big things happen and they just overshadow these other storylines.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who firmly believe, like, look, it's okay on any TV show if every single scene, every single storyline isn't about like pushing forward the central storyline. But I do think what you said is true about the overall feeling is that we're now in the third and final act of Game of Thrones, right? It's just beginning, and the show probably has 2 more actual calendar years, but that this is now, we're heading into the ending of the show. And so it becomes much more notable when a storyline seems to be way off on its own. And like something like Sam, you're like, okay, it was different when it was year 3. And even for Dany, it is somewhat repetitive because after Khal Drogo died, she was kind of like adrift and out there, not sure what to do. And so to have her kind of back physically, in a similar area to where she was with the same people, it's just not where we want to feel things are because we're feeling the momentum. Oh, the White Walkers are coming and all this stuff is happening.
I think it is a pacing issue because I know, like we've also said before, it feels like they're going through storylines so fast. But Game of Thrones is a show where every second counts because there's so many characters. And I agree, like not every scene should or can be something that's actively pushing the plot forward. But you have these great scenes like when Tyrion is sitting down with Missandei and Grey Worm and trying to small talk.
That's a great moment.
And there's no plot there.
Yeah.
It's just a character moment and it's funny and it works for me. Because of course, you need to have some of these characters just being humans. And I think the problem with the Arya and Dany storyline for me is that it's not doing either of those things, especially with Arya where it was like, I feel like it was just so it didn't completely copy the format of the books, which also ended with that cliffhanger in A Feast for Crows with Arya, and then it was like a third of the way through the next book, but then her next chapter ended with, and when she woke in the morning, she had her sight back, sort of thing. So I feel like they wanted to check in with her so they didn't feel like they were pulling the same bait and switch.
Right, and I do think, whether it's George R. R. Martin or Ben Alfred Weiss, they're not going to keep them away from everyone forever. I mean, even more so with Dany. To have Dany never get to Westeros would be kind of
the
horrible.
Biggest disappointment ever.
She'll get there, and I think Arya will get back there too. But I do think right now we're feeling it more about, okay, when's this going to connect back?
Especially since you're right, it does feel like the final act, and so it does feel like the puzzle pieces are starting to come together, and then you have these two that just don't seem like they're even in the same puzzle that you're trying to resolve. I agree with you. I think Dany will come back eventually. It seems like Dario and Jorah are hot on her trail. Arya is always a character who I'm a little confused about unless we know Jaqen got to Westeros fairly easy.
Yeah.
Maybe she's sent to assassinate someone or anything like that. But yeah, I'm curious to see how long they leave that connection back vague.
Right. I'm hoping by the end of this season we get for both those characters a little more, pushing forward into Westeros. Because I love both those characters, but I want them to sort of be tied in more directly.